You might wanna buckle up, baby.
Punch it, I'm Jacob and welcome to Lightspeed. The 6th episode of the Acolyte, Teach Corrupt, is now streaming on Disney+, so let's talk about it. And there's honestly no way that I can talk about this episode without spoilers, so I highly recommend watching this episode for yourself and then coming back to this video. And to me personally, I felt like this week's episode was a perfect contrast and continuation of last week's episode. And it's pretty much exactly what the episode is titled, with Soul teaching and talking with May as Kamir corrupts Osha. I also love how this episode began with Osha quickly waking up, a perfect parallel to her character's introduction. I saw a lot of people claiming that that unknown planet in this episode was actually Octo from the sequel trilogy, but the more that I think about it and see discussion online, I genuinely believe that this planet is actually Baldimnik. In Legends, that planet was rich with cortosis and subsequently acted as the perfect hiding spot for both Darth Tenebrous and Darth Plagueis. Leslie Headland also said in a recent interview that this planet is indeed not Octo from the sequel trilogy, but was massively influenced from it. It's interesting that Soul immediately tries to inform the Jedi on Coruscant of the dark side user wiping out his entire company, but alas, wouldn't you believe it, the transmissions aren't going through, making Soul and May the only people that are truly aware that the Sith are still lurking around in some capacity. Not that it would really make a difference if Soul did tell the Jedi Council this, as we've kind of seen this exact scenario before and it didn't really pan out well for Qui-Gon. Granted, I do feel like Vernestra is definitely aware of something happening behind the scenes, as she's incredibly quick to grab a team of her own to travel to Kafar to help Soul. I also love how she's talking to an unnamed senator via hologram, and that specific senator tells her that the Senate has no reason to be skeptical of the Jedi, as they have always been honest and transparent with the Senate. It's almost like if what Vernestra and Soul are aware of and have been covering up, if that comes to light, it'll perfectly pave the way for the rockier relationship between the Jedi Order and the Galactic Senate by the time of the prequel trilogy. I never entirely bought that Soul was unaware of May trading spots with Osha, but I love how he explains to May that he feels blind and cannot sense certain feelings or intentions. It's almost like he's overwhelmed by the recent discovery of the Sith, the loss of his friends, and the burden of keeping whatever happened on Bryndock all those years ago a secret. But to me, the best parts of this episode come from Kamir's relationship with Osha and their dynamic and conversations on the unknown planet, with him even pushing Osha to stab him with his own lightsaber, letting out her anger and frustration, which we all know are pathways to the dark side. I don't entirely believe if he was a Jedi like he claimed he once was. If so, he'd have to be pretty young, but I do like the subtle nod that the Sith's roots are directly connected to the Jedi's. A lot of people have been making jokes online about a naked Kamir in this episode, but I found it interesting how he reveals himself to Osha honestly as vulnerable as possible. It's interesting to note that Osha claims that she left the Jedi Order on her own terms, yet also claims that she failed and wasn't good enough. I love the contrast between the Jedi and the Sith here, with Kamir telling Osha that it's this loss that defines you, whereas Jeki told Osha on Kafar that we are not defined by what we have lost, but rather how we survive. We still don't know the full reason as to why Osha left the Order, but it seems to be a combination of the situation on Bryndock with Soul, Osha's own personal reasons, and the Jedi feeling uneasy about her continuing to train under their leadership. I also found it interesting how the stranger's cortosis helmet acts as a sensory deprivation chamber as well, with Kamir telling Osha that whenever you put it on, only you and what you take with you are present. I can't be the only one that found this to be a parallel to the Force caves and visions that we've seen in Star Wars before, and honestly, I actually kind of found the scene to be really unsettling, with the limited vision and breathing being the only things that we see and hear before this episode comes to a close. It was very much present to me and a lot of other people online that this episode felt very thematically similar to The Last Jedi, and there's no way that that wasn't intentional. Throughout the entire episode, I found myself getting the vibes similar to those of Reylo, and even Kylo Ren's viewpoint in that movie of letting the past die. I guess you could say that somehow 2017 Star Wars returned. But that being said, it made for an episode that I found to be incredibly interesting and honestly a thematically really strong follow-up to episode 5 being so action-centric. I'm really enjoying these characters and the story a lot personally, And although I'm not the first person to say it, I do feel like a lot does hinge on the next 2 episodes. I feel like the series has gotten better with each and every episode, so I'm excited to see how the series does come to a close. That being said, what did you think of episode 6 of The Acolyte? Were you a fan? Were you not a fan? Are you kind of in the middle? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, I have a link to my Discord server down below in the description, so if you want to join the server, make sure to click that link in the description below. Also, I will say that the review for next week's episode of The Acolyte might be a little bit late, only because next Tuesday is actually my birthday. I will be watching the episode and tweeting about it, so definitely stay tuned for that. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until the next video, may the Force be with you.